It's good to see you all once again to Hansraj e-Samvaad. This is Piyush Chaudhary from the Department of English, Hansraj College, University of Delhi. Welcoming you all once again to the ongoing lecture series on the GE readings on Indian diversity and literary movements. GE which is offered by the various colleges under the Department of English at the University of Delhi. As the viewers know, we have completed several units of our syllabus and now I'll take you to another unit. This new unit is titled Women Speak. Under this, there will be two parts. The first is A.K. Ramanujan's A Flowering Tree, and the second one will be Nabanita Deb Sen's Chandrabati Ramayan. Today, I'll be reading Nabanita Deb Sen's Chandrabati Ramayan, which she has written on the 16th century, Bengali poet Chandrabati. And Nabanita Deb Sen has written an essay on that, and this woman poet, this Bengali poet Chandrabati, she wrote a Ramayan. So it is basically a woman's retelling of the Ram tale, right? It's a woman's version of Ramayana. It is a very interesting unit in which students will learn how women are represented in literature and how patriarchy tries to permeate and infiltrate literary history to suit it as per to make it suit as per their own needs. The idea is that the patriarchal description of women and patriarchal representations of women have overshadowed women's unique achievements in the field of literary studies. Most of the literature that we know is always male centric. You will notice this is highly discriminatory, and this occurs due to the patriarchal representations of women. On the contrary, the point that the students have to understand, and this is one of the core areas behind this unit, Women Speak, and this point is that women's achievements and women's literary achievements and literary narratives and women's contribution in literature has been hijacked. It has been hidden by forces of patriarchy. There can be several reasons for this. First and foremost, uh, it is to keep women under check because that is exactly what patriarchy does. Patriarchy wants to control women and their agency and their individuality. And they do so by restricting and by not highlighting and by hiding the achievements, I would say, of women in literary studies. Secondly, the representations of women, mostly focuses on their helplessness, their weaknesses. It shows the weaker side of women, that they are incomplete without the man. So what this basically means is that women are not given adequate space, and even in traditional representations of women, they are seen as dependent on men. So there is this lack of agency, which is quite visible in literary studies. And this brings us to the idea of gynocriticism by Elaine Showalter, which says that women need to have their own, they need to have their own separate individual form of criticism and must not be judged on the hallmarks and on the standards set by the men, because the hallmark and the standards set by men are reductive in nature and they naturally discriminate against what you can say women's idea of literary production, right? So on this note, I go forward, on reading Chandrabati Ramayan. Chandrabati Ramayan is basically written by Chandrabati, a 16th century Bengali poet, and she wrote women-centered epics. She wrote women-centered poetry, women-centered stories. As we all know, we have read the epic, both the epics, Ramayana and Mahabharata, and the focus of both the epics, you will undoubtedly believe, are male-centric. There are several women which are important characters in both these epics, but they are not given the central focus and they are often blamed for the problems that happens in the epics. Chandrabati, on the other hand, wrote a woman-centered epic. She wrote a woman-centered Ramayana. So it can also be referred to as a Sitayan, right? So therefore, it's Ramayan versus the idea of Sitayan. I hope the readers are able to appreciate this, and instead of celebrating masculine heroism as in the case of Ramayan, Chandrabati's version of Ramayan talks about the suffering of women, particularly the lead character, and that is Sita. So traditional representations do not focus on the humiliations, the pains, and the individuality of Sita, right? We have Ram Charitmanas, but we don't have a similarly Sita Charitmanas in that sense. So Chandrabati takes on the onus of writing an epic which is women centric. So on this note, I will begin with the essay, and this is by Professor Nabanita Deb Sen from Jadarpur University, and she begins this essay by writing about the different works written by the Bengali poet Chandrabati. So, in this essay, she comments on how traditional male critics and male literary historians have undermined women's individuality and are mainly concerned about their marital status. So, according to Nabanita Deb Sen, traditional male historians and critics have monopolized literature and they have given preference only to male centric literature only. So she's commenting on the hegemony of literary historians, and she says that this is done to silence women, to put them under silence. She says, Nabanita Dev Sen says in this essay, that it is a tactic which is deliberately aimed to ensure that women are not able to come out openly and protest against patriarchy. Now, according to Chandrabati, the Ramayana that she wrote is completely male centric and focuses on the female characters. Sita has been ignored deliberately, as she is rebellious in nature, and she mentions that Chandrabati mentions that this Ramayana by Chandrabati, it begins with the Sita story, unlike Ramayana which begins with Ram's story. So these are the different deviations and differences between the traditional Ramayana and the Chandrabati Ramayana, which is written by the poet Chandrabati. So, in short, this essay by Nabanita Dev Sen, which is in your syllabus, is a critical analysis of the original Chandrabati Ramayana. She is commenting, on the original Chandrabati Ramayana. Then she also mentions how in Chandrabati Ramayana, Sita herself becomes the narrator, and she talks about her childhood, her marriage, her life with Lord Ram, and as his bride, and also the life that she lived with him in exile and how she was abducted. So look at these lines to understand, the traditional, contrasting manner in which the traditional Ramayana is written and the way in which Chandrabati is written. These lines are important, and I am reading from the book. In the next section, book 2, the narrator changes and a sub narrative appears within the main narrative. Sita herself is now the narrator. Having returned from Lanka, Sita is at ease and talks freely about her childhood, marriage, and so on and so forth. Ram's achievements, the breaking of the Dhanush, the entire epic battle, are only summarily referred to, not described, through Sita's Badomasi, the song of 12 months, relating the incident of one's life to the seasonal changes. The heroic code is therefore gently broken. So, in these lines, we see how the male centric achievements, such as the breaking of the powerful bow, which Lord Ram broke in the Ramayana, or the mighty battles that he fought, they are just summarized. They are just briefly summarized. Right? So, these heroic acts are not given much importance in what you can say the Chandrabati version of Ramayana. Also, there are other differences which I'll be quoting. For example, there is one more quote which is important, and she says, maximum color and space are spent on the romantic exploits of Sita and Ram in the forest. It is like camping in the woods. Sita and Chandrabati make exile sound delicious. So once again, reading these lines, you get a feeling that she's giving more, she's giving one more difference between the traditional Ramayana and Chandrabati Ramayana. So basically, Chandrabati is giving voice to a character which has been ignored since thousands and thousands of years, right? This is because in a heroic epic, the woman's agency, the woman's speech, the woman's individuality, her identity gets lost completely. This is because traditional epics are always male centric. So, the purpose of putting this in your syllabus is to tell you that we need to appreciate and give adequate space to women centric tales. So, this is the complete, that's why the name of the unit is Women Speak. Women are speaking now, right? Now, I'll quote one more line, to understand the purpose of writing Chandrabati Ramayana. Nabanita Dev Sen says, we have here a narrative about a woman, narrated by a woman, meant for women audience. Yes, the text was originally intended for a female audience, as the recurring formula here is Shuno Shikhajan. That means listen, girl, friends, not Shuno Sabhajan. That is listen, members of the court, nor Shunu Sarvajan, listen one and all, as the regular formula goes. These are the epic formulas basically. Here, the formula is Suno Shikhajan. Hence, the producer of the text is a woman, the product depicts a woman's life, and the consumers are also women. Right? So, this gives a core idea. Now, look at one more paragraph to understand how Chandrabati was a unique writer and the importance that she holds in bringing women's literature on the forefront. She says, as narrator, Sita and Chandrabati differ in that one is a character, the other an outsider, with two different points of view. They all differ in worldviews. Sita is an ideal representation of the dominant ideology, but Chandrabati is a dissenter because she questions, challenges, and punctures the ideology of our times in her personal intrusions and also in her selection of episode, depth of detail, and silences. So, therefore, Chandrabati is called as a rebellious poet, as a rebellious epic writer, as a dissenter. Once again, look at these lines towards the end of the essay, which are very important, and more lines which I'll be quoting is she says, similarly, Chandrabati Ramayana has been neglected and rejected for years by our male custodians of Bengali literature as an incomplete work. This is what we called a silence text, and it exposes the obvious failure to recognize Chandrabati Ramayana as a personal interpretation of a Ram tale, seen specifically from a woman's point of view. So, what exactly does Nabanita Deb Sen mean? According to her, patriarchal literature is also patriarchal in nature because male custodians of literary history give no focus, to the women characters. All the focus is given to the male characters. The male characters are glorified. The women are shown as troublemakers. The women are shown as the cause of wars. It is shown that it is the women which cause all the distress. They cause the war. They cause the problem. This is an extremely wrong interpretation of the traditional epics. Patriarchy forces us to understand and think in these terms. And we, as students of literature, we are here to resist this thinking. And this is the reason why this paper has been added in your GE by the Department of English at the University of Delhi, so that you may be aware of the different ways and the insidious manners, the insidious ways in which patriarchy functions. It functions by showing women as troublemakers. It functions by showing women as lower to men. It functions by showing women as, starting wars in the epic. It functions by showing women as dependent on men and weak and hapless as victims. And this is, as I mentioned right now, is extremely wrong, and it is a wrong interpretation of the traditional epics. Right? Similarly, at the end, once again, Nabanita Dev Sen makes a strong comment that the male custodians of Bengali literature, that is the male historians, the male literary historians, male critics, have ignored and they have deliberately silenced this particular text. Have we heard about Chandrabati Ramayana so frequently in our lives? No. It is deliberately silenced by not showing it to the world and by calling it as an incomplete, wrong, or rebellious work. But at the same time, it shows the rebellious spirit of a 16th century Bengali epic writer. Her name is Chandrabati. And we cannot reject this Ramayana because we know that male historians have always undermined women's agencies and women's speech. It is a deliberate tactic to ignore them, to silence them, to prevent them from coming to the mainstream. So, through this lecture, through this story, we are attempting to read these stories and bring it to the mainstream. So, this is the larger idea, that Nabanita Dev Sen makes. And basically, she wants to prevent gendered literature to be thrown down the annals of history in neglect. Okay, we are neglecting Chandrabati Ramayana. We should not. So it is our responsibility that this does not get ignored. And this is the reason why this unit has been titled as Women Speak, because it allows women to speak and it shows how women have traditionally gone against patriarchal forces of their society and literature, you know, which focuses on their individuality. So this is in short about this essay by Nabanita Deb Sen. Similarly, we have another topic, and that is A.K. Ramanujan's A Flowering Tree. It's a part of oral tradition. It is Kannada folk tale. It's a folk tale which shows the individuality of women, and it shows how women have been commodified through history, through literary history, in literature. How women lose their agency and how they roughly become a commodity. But I'll be creating, in fact, I'll be giving a link to this in the description box, because I have already created a video on AK Ramanujan's A Flowering Tree as part of the VAC Culture and Communication, the value addition course. It is already offered by the University of Delhi, this VAC Culture and Communication, and two dedicated videos have already been created. I will attach the link also in the description box, so that, because even if it's created for VSC Culture and Communication, it is quite relevant for your GE paper as well, for reading under this syllabus, GE in readings for Indian diversity and literary movements as well. I've already created 2 videos and I'll be attaching both the links. I'll not be making separate videos, but I'll be giving a link so that you can watch in continuation. So therefore, I would urge you to watch these 2 videos also, and when you are preparing for an exam, the link will be attached. So therefore, I now come to the end of this lecture, that is, of this unit, that is Women Speak. We have completed one more unit in our syllabus, and we are left with just one unit now, which is literary cultures of Gujarati and Sindhi literature and Sindhi language. So my next lecture will be on that topic, which talks about the literary cultures which are visible in Gujarati literature and Sindhi literature. I'll be making more videos in that series. So please stay tuned at Hansraj e-Samvaad, and I will see you very shortly in the next lecture. Thank you. Prepare well for your exams. Goodbye. Jai Hind.